I'm sure there are plenty of us adults in this room who can relate. Fractions are uncomfortable. Give us whole numbers, a nice, clean, easy 1 or 2 or 10. But an important part of my job was teaching my students number sense. So I'd always find myself reassuring them, saying, they're just like regular numbers. They're just parts of a whole. I had so many students who actually preferred decimals. Oftentimes I had to remind them that decimals and fractions were the same thing. 1/5 is equal to 0.2. Add another fifth, you get 2/5, which is the same as 0.4. Add another fifth, you have 3/5. It's the same as 0.6. And you can keep doing this and doing this until you get to 5/5, which is the same as 1 whole. Nice, clean, and easy. When I had a student I wanted to mess with, I would have them do this with thirds. You see, thirds are tricky. When you convert a third into a decimal, it is not pretty. 1/3 is equal to 0.333333333, and on and on and on, repeating. There's an infinite amount of threes after that decimal point. I'd ask a student, well, if 1/3 is equal to 0.3 repeating, then what's 2/3 as a decimal? And they'd think about it, and usually they'd be able to come up with, well, 0.333 plus another 0.333 gives me 0.666. So 2/3 must be equal to 0.6 repeating. Great. I'd ask, how about 3/3? Easy. Add another 0.333 and you get 0.9999. So 3/3 must be equal to 0.9 repeating. Wait, I'd stop them. Shouldn't 3/3 be equal to 1 whole? And they'd think about it and think about it. And usually this conversation would end with them stomping off. Bruh, this doesn't make any sense. Here's the thing. I am a certified math teacher, and I agree, bruh, this does not make any sense. This issue with the thirds has always stumped me too. It's something I struggle to wrap my mind around. I know for a fact we have a couple of mathematicians who are members of this congregation, so they can probably explain it better than me. But whenever I try to research an explanation for this problem, the internet just tells me, yeah, 0.99999 repeating is just the same as 1 whole. Mind blown. I think this has something to do with the fact that 1 whole can be split up into infinitely many parts. It's hard for us to wrap our minds around it because we live in a very finite and concrete world. If we have a block of cheese, there's a limit to how small we can cut the pieces. But if we think beyond the limits of matter and molecules and atoms and things we can touch, we can cut something into thousands and millions and billions and so on. 0.9999999 repeating on and on forever is the same as 1 whole because you gotta take into account all those parts. And there always are more parts than we can even fathom. When we think of 1 whole, we just picture the number 1. The nice, clean, easy number 1. We want it to be neatly wrapped up in a bow. If we picture a pie that is whole, we picture a pie that has not been cut into yet. When we think of a whole song, we think of a song from beginning to end, on key and uninterrupted. When we think of a person who is whole, well, then they must have it all together. But the fact that 1 whole is the same as 0.99999 repeating is just proof that wholeness is messier than we think, and wholeness can be infinite. In my very early days teaching math, I felt like I had found a sense of purpose that would bring me wholeness in my life. I felt so energized and committed to a calling to help close the opportunity gap in an underserved school district. It was a calling that shaped my entire sense of identity and every breath I took. After struggling in office jobs in my early 20s, this was the calling that was going to make me feel complete. I knew it would be hard, but I was going to work at it and work at it and work at it. And eventually I was going to be like that self-assured teacher they showed us in our training videos. The teachers who knew what they were doing, whose classrooms ran smoothly and were an oasis of empowered learning, whose students gave moving testimonials about their positive experience. This was going to be the job that made me feel whole. This was going to bring me to a nice, clean, easy one. You can imagine my deep disappointment and shame when I burnt out very quickly. I ended up spending most of my time teaching in this intense tug of war between my love for my students and my feelings of inadequacy. It's a tug of war that ripped and tore at me, bringing me to some of my lowest of lows. This job and this purpose that was supposed to bring me wholeness had left me feeling broken, and I often still struggle to move past it. There was one time during my first year of teaching when I was having a particularly terrible day. It was right after Thanksgiving. The head math teacher, who I had relied on so heavily as a mentor, arrived early before school that morning, packed up her things, and resigned. I remember feeling so blindsided and so suddenly lost and alone, frantically trying to wipe my tears as I sharpened pencils before class, willing myself to get it together so my students wouldn't see me cry. Then class began, and I had to teach. I was less than a minute into my lesson when I saw one of my colleagues, one of my dearest friends, sneak into the back of my classroom. And she just sat there, smiling the warmest, most loving smile at me, attentively listening to my lesson. She was a fellow first-year teacher who taught science. We had started at the same time together, gone through training together, spent time outside the classroom together, swapping stories about our students and our struggles and our vulnerabilities. We'd cried in her car together. This was her prep period, her one break from the chaos of the day, but on that day, she chose to spend it being present with me in my classroom, knowing I was having a hard time. And as her love and generosity and support washed over me, and I felt the deep wells of gratitude and appreciation and love fill up inside of me, our hearts locked in on each other. And in that moment, it felt like we were an extension of one another. Amidst the feelings of brokenness and inadequacy, it was enough in that moment to make me feel whole. Now, this wasn't magic. This moment did not flip some sort of switch inside me that gave me all the answers or fixed my problems. It did not make me feel like I had it all together or even ever would. I wasn't at a nice, clean, easy one. But in that moment, it felt like someone truly saw me in all my chips and cracks and crumbling pieces. And they gazed upon me with no judgment, only care, validating my brokenness, reminding me that I was worth caring for and I was okay. I was enough. It felt in that moment like I was somehow tapped into a holy, sacred, and abundant love beyond her and me. It gave me the feeling of that 0.9999 kind of wholeness, messy and infinite. even during times of our lives when we are feeling hurt and broken. Feeling whole is possible. And our experiences of brokenness can make it feel even more profound. We can't feel or notice wholeness without honoring the parts of ourselves that feel broken or incomplete, like those fractions we're all so uncomfortable with. And while this does not justify or glorify suffering, it does maybe uncover some hope. Hope for wholeness. In our reading today, psychologist David G. Benner talks about the cracks that let the light in. When we, with our chips and cracks and imperfections, turn toward a radical and inclusive love, the kind of love that is sacred and infinite, we are letting the light in and opening ourselves up to the possibility of wholeness. Maybe we turn toward it in one single moment where our heart locks with someone else's. Maybe we turn toward it by entering into a community where we can come as we are, carrying our chips and our cracks and our broken bits with us. Maybe we turn toward it by looking deep inside ourselves, greeting our truest, most authentic, vulnerable, and imperfect selves with warmth and care and compassion. Social researcher Brene Brown explains this well when she says, "Owning our story can be hard, but not nearly as difficult as spending our lives running from it. Embracing our vulnerabilities is risky, but not nearly as dangerous as giving up on love and belonging and joy, the very experiences which make us the most vulnerable. It's only when we are brave enough to explore the darkness that we discover the infinite power of our light. The infinite power of our light. Light through the cracks. An infinite, messy wholeness. 0.99999. We're entering into a time of year when many of us feel the pressure to make everything perfect, to feel perfect, to be perfect, to do things perfectly, find the perfect gift, host the perfect gathering, hang the lights just right to create the perfect ambiance so that we can invoke those perfect feelings of holiday cheer. It's easy to mistake that perfection for wholeness. And when we do that, we're placing high expectations on ourselves that miss the mark and often leave us feeling inadequate. We ask ourselves, what is wrong with me? Why am I not feeling how I'm supposed to feel? I think that many of us long to recapture some sort of perfect holiday memory from our childhood, back when wholeness might have felt more like a nice, clean, easy one, rather than 0.99999. That's the thing about wholeness, though. It's not something that can be manufactured or even earned. Wholeness is not self-improvement or perfection. It's a feeling you bump up against through encounters with that holy, radical, and inclusive love. It's an experience of the sacred that can sneak up on you. And sometimes it can be fleeting, lasting only the length of a math class. What we can do, though, is embody that love for others to encounter. By letting the light of radical, inclusive, and transformative love shine out and through our chips and cracks and wear and tear, we can cultivate this profound wholeness in the world around us. And by participating in the dynamism of love and loving others as parts of ourselves, we can experience an even bigger sense of whole. A joyful, infinite wholeness that can grow and spread through and over and under and about and into those around us. This morning at Fourth Universalist, we have welcomed 17 new members into our church. Here in this sacred place where we can come as we are, carrying our chips and our cracks and our broken bits with us. It's my hope for you, new members. Here in this community, you feel blessed by a light that brings you experiences of wholeness. For your presence and the love that you bring with you today help to make our community whole. I'd like to leave us today with the words of Mary Oliver, who says, "You do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Tell me about despair, yours, and I will tell you mine. Meanwhile, the world goes on. Meanwhile, the sun and the clear pebbles of rain are moving across the landscapes, over the prairies and the deep trees, the mountains and the rivers. Meanwhile, the wild geese high in the clean blue air are heading home again. Whoever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers itself to your imagination, calls to you like the wild geese, harsh and exciting, over and over, announcing your place in the family of things.